Good morning. Good to see you. At least I can see your little eye right there at the back of the sanctuary, and I know you're there. So welcome to one and all. I'm going to begin this morning by thanking Todd Milne, who is not only working our sound booth as he has been throughout these past few weeks, but he also gifted us with his incredible music talent with that piece of recorded music that he owns the copyright on, so we were able to play it this morning. He's going to close our service with some of his music as well, so you'll get to enjoy it again. But Todd, thank you so much. We appreciate it. He says, well, welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, where our mission is to join together to create a nourishing, liberal, religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world. Or as we like to say in short, and please say it with me, to create community, find meaning, and work for justice. And as always, I want to welcome all of you, all that you bring with you, all of your uniqueness, your unique beliefs and background and lifestyle and experiences, your differences, all that helps make you who you are is welcome here this morning. And that goes for those who hear me say this every Sunday and those who might be joining us for the first time today. You're equally as welcome and appreciated. So thank you all so much for being here. This is our virtual service, obviously, in light of the COVID-19 pandemic that we're all facing. I'm guessing we're going to be continuing this through the rest of this month and probably some into May at the very least. So just stay tuned, and we will do our best to continue to connect with one another in other ways at this time. So great to have you this morning. I do want to begin also by wishing you a happy Easter. If Easter is an important holiday to you, whether it's from a Christian perspective or from maybe a more earth-centered perspective and appreciation of the promise of the renewal of spring. So happy Easter to one and all. And I want to remind you we are still in the midst of our generosity campaign and continue to appreciate your ongoing support of this congregation. If you want to send in a pledge or if you want to change yours in any way, please do let us know. Otherwise, we're going to be counting on your continued contribution for the coming year as we go through our budgeting process during this odd time for all of us. So, we're going to do our virtual welcoming of one another, and I'm going to suggest something. You don't have to, but as you reach out to somebody in our congregation or somebody else, if you'd like, to say hello via text or an email, of course, please do so. But we're going to be talking about the importance of not only having values, but knowing what our core values are this morning. At least I'm going to be talking about that in a few minutes. So I want you to take a minute to think about it. Think about what is one of my core values. What gives my life meaning and purpose, and what drives me in all I do. If you can, in a couple of minutes, if you've thought about it, and share that with somebody this morning during our greeting of one another. So please take a few minutes to greet one another now. I hope you'll continue that conversation later on, but we are going to continue now by reflecting upon the light of our chalice, the symbol of our faith, the symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need, and may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found. I do have some opening words today. I'm going to read from James Luther Adams' book on being human religiously. James Luther Adams, the late James Luther Adams, has really been considered one of the greatest of Unitarian theologians in modern history. An apt story is told about the Harvard geologist Nathaniel Shaler of several generations ago. To the great annoyance of a number of his colleagues on the faculty, Shaler persisted in objecting to the award of a top scholarship to a certain student. Repeatedly, Shaler was reminded that this student possessed an all-A record, but Shaler would not approve the award. Finally, Barrett Wendell of the English department put the question squarely to Shaler at a faculty meeting. Why are you set against this man who has such a superb record? In reply, the tall, red-bearded Scotsman stood up and said, I am voting against this student because of his cantankerous whatlessness. A liberal arts education is a failure if it develops the ability to think, but issues in whatlessness, a lack of commitment. Does this mean that liberal education should attempt indoctrination? By no means, at least not if indoctrination entails the transmission of a neat package of dogma that is exempt from criticism. Students as well as teachers, if they are to be liberated from whatlessness, must avoid two equally enervating attitudes, a diffused identity and a foreclosed self-identity on the other hand. The formed self requires structure, and if a structure is to grow and to become relevant to changing situations, it must be a dynamic structure. So I'm now going to light the candle behind my shoulder here so you can see it. Is part of our Kindle ritual for those who are most on our hearts and minds. And I did not receive any specific request for candles today, but I know there are an awful lot of people we all have on our minds this morning. So please think of them at this moment of silence on behalf of those that we care a great deal for. those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion. I'm going to now offer our story for all ages. So if you're at home and that makes you want to sit on the floor at the front of the room, go right ahead. Okay, so this is a very interesting guest today here. I'm going to introduce you to one of today's most respected philosophers. This is Professor Alfonso Greathorn, highly regarded for his work in the areas of algebra, alchemy, and of course, anthropology. Professor Greathorn is widely considered a real know-it-all. Welcome, Professor. Professor? It looks like he might be asleep. I guess he's a bit of a night owl. Okay, looks like maybe he's starting to wake up now. Oh, there he is. Well, good morning, Professor Greathorn. How are you? Who? Professor Greathorn? Who? You are Professor Greathorn, aren't you? Who? Professor Greathorn. I know who. I'm an owl. I say who a lot. Okay, well that makes sense. Professor, you're a wise old owl, and I was hoping that you might explain to us what it is that makes you so wise. I don't know. You don't know what makes you wise? Yes. So yes, you don't know what makes you wise, or yes, you do know what makes you wise? Yes, I do. You do? Okay, well, would you please then tell us what it is that makes you wise? I don't know. You don't know. You don't know what makes you wise. No. No, you don't know what makes you wise, or no, you do know what makes you wise. I do. You do know. Yes. You know what makes you wise. Yes. Well, would you please tell us what it is that makes you so wise? I don't know. Okay. So you don't know what makes you wise. Yes. Well, would you please tell us, because that's what I'm asking, what is it that makes you so wise? I don't know. You don't know? Yes. Okay, this is getting pretty bad. I need a room full of chucklers to help me carry through here. But okay, so if you say that you do know what makes you wise, and yet you don't know what makes you wise, I just don't understand. You keep saying you know that you know what makes you wise, but every time I ask, you say you don't know. So would you please explain to us? Who? Oh gosh, don't start that again. Do you know what makes you wise or not? Yes. Well, then tell us what makes you wise, please. I don't know. Okay, so I'm trying to figure this out here. Are you telling us that what makes you wise is that you don't know? Yes. Oh, I get it. So what makes you wise is not thinking that you're so wise, or that you know that you have what? Extreme knowledge or absolute knowledge? Yes. Wow, that's a great concept. So, well, Professor Greathorn, we sure appreciate your confusing visit with us today. And next time you come, I'm going to make sure I have a live audience. So thank you very much. That worked much better for Abbott and Costello, I think. Okay, there's my script. Let's take just a few minutes or a couple of minutes to meditate and get into another state of mind this morning. This is a reading from the back of our gray hymnal that I thought would be appropriate for this morning by Max Coots. We need a celebration that speaks the spring-inspired word about life and death, about us as we live and die, through all the cycling seasons, days, and years. We need the sense of deity to crack our own hard, brown December husk and push life out of inner tombs and outer pain. Unless we move the seasons of the self and spring can come for us, the winter will go on, and Easter will remain a myth, and life will never come again despite the fact of spring. My sermon today is entitled "A Life Worth Living," examining and defining the values that hold us steady. When I was called as your minister 9 years ago, you asked me to begin at the start of July, a month earlier than as usual. That meant I had a month less than I'd expected to get our home ready for the market. I renovated a bathroom, repaired a section of garage roof that a tree had fallen over and crushed, repainted much of the inside, installed new wiring and plumbing, bruised a bursitis in my knee while laying a new kitchen floor, and had to unexpectedly repair a patch of dry rot that I discovered under the refrigerator in the process. I worked every hour that I could, right up to moving day, knowing that I wouldn't be able to finish everything and that I'd eventually have to just walk away, leaving much undone. When moving day came, I got off my sore knees to start packing the moving truck. Our 19-year-old son, Julian, who had only moved out of the house 2 weeks prior, was to bring his SUV over so that I could trade him my more fuel-efficient Scion XB. We needed the larger vehicle that his grandparents had given him to carry 3 people, 3 dogs, and our essentials with us across the country. When he arrived, I heard a terrible grinding noise coming from his Suzuki XL7. He got out and said, "I think there's something wrong with the brakes." He had correctly diagnosed the problem. In fact, there were no brakes. They'd been ground down to nothing so badly that the shoe on one side had completely fallen apart. So on moving day, I had to get the vehicle towed to Sears Auto, which would take care of it the same day, then return to the house to finish packing the truck. By the time I got the car back and loaded, I was exhausted and felt I was leaving way too much unfinished, including saying goodbye to our neighbors and little ceremony saying goodbye to my son who didn't want to leave Louisville with us. But I'd done all that I could do. It was time to let go. The trip itself was not entirely uneventful, especially when we got to Kansas. It was extremely hot, which caused our overworked air conditioner to begin flooding our floorboard with condensed water. To make matters worse, it happened on Sunday of the July 4th weekend, making it nearly impossible to find a mechanic who could work on it. Eventually, we did find a tire store open that was able to help us out, and in the process, they let us know that those scorching hot Kansas summer interstates had ruined our tires. So many hours later, and a new set of expensive tires to boot, we were again on our way. We ended up spending part of 3 different days in Kansas instead of just the one that we had planned. And that's when I began joking that I'm no longer a Universalist, because I now do believe in eternal damnation. Kansas is hotter than hell, and it lasts forever. I begin with this snippet of our journey to Spokane as a metaphor of life. Things don't always go as planned. We run out of time, we can't do everything, and we encounter unexpected problems. Yet, here I am, 9 years later. Why? Why didn't we give up and say we can't move on because we've got unfinished business? Or because our vehicle is inadequate? Or because we'll have to go through hell getting there? We endured all of these unpleasant realities because the point was never about finishing the house or the car we drive or how difficult the trip might be. The point was getting to Spokane. And that's the question I think should be before each of us in all that we do. What's the point? The answer is something that we each have to figure out for ourselves. And this isn't to say the meaning of a life is entirely subjective. As we struggle to understand the perennial problems of meaning, truth, and morality, we should pursue them intelligently and responsibly by seeking empirical evidence for our conclusions and interpreting such evidence through reason. Because of our limitations, however, it's not possible for anyone to fully grasp meaning, truth, or morality, which is why it always comes down to some degree to subjective guesswork. But I think that we should base every leap of faith on our best educated guess, not upon our emotional whims and instinctive desires. I also believe that we should each be able to easily articulate for ourselves, if for no one else, what the point of our lives is. What is our source of meaning? What is our purpose here. Why do we think so? If we don't understand the why, we don't understand why our goals, principles, or values give us purpose, then we're not living a worthy life. At least not according to Socrates, who famously said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Each of us has values, even if we aren't fully cognizant of them, even if we sense them only through unconscious emotional cravings and instinctive desires. They might drive us to pursue the welfare of our children and families, or a good income, wealth, fame, fortune, power, to be a good person, to be a kind person, to live on easy street, to find love, to make the world a better place, and so forth. Knowing what we're about, what our purpose is, what the point of all it is, helps us get there, no matter what barriers we must work around along the way. Knowing what we're about, what the point of it all is, enables us to let go of the things that distract us from our goals, or from fulfilling our purpose, or from living our values. Knowing what we're about gives us permission to leave other things undone, to maintain the vehicles that will get us there, and to endure whatever hardships we encounter along the way. So we've all got something driving us. But how many of us have intentionally determined what it is, and more importantly, what it should be? What if we discover we're motivated most by unworthy goals and unworthy values? What if our reason for being is merely our personal safety or controlling others so we always get our way, which manifests as greed and authoritarianism? Yet we don't know we're behaving as greedy authoritarians because we've not examined our lives, our purpose, or our underlying values. We go through life rather pursuing the immediate gratification of our instinctive desires, rationalizing and justifying them on an emotional whim. In his book, How to Think Like a Roman Emperor, about the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius, author Donald Robertson says, "Foolish people vacillate, driven by contradictory passions which flutter from one thing to another like butterflies." That's why we often hear the Stoics praising the wise for remaining the same no matter what one faces. Even one's facial expression and demeanor remain consistent, come rain or shine. That's the value of having values, of being clear on what we're about before ever arriving upon a difficult situation. It's how we know we must do what we must do in the midst of chaos and uncertainty. It's how we maintain integrity and express character in the most difficult of circumstances. This is the reason the Stoics came up with a different answer to the same problem Buddha faced. Before he became the enlightened one, young Siddhartha experimented a great deal while trying to figure out the meaning of life. First, he tried asceticism by overindulging in life's pleasures. Unsatisfied, he went in the opposite direction, asceticism, by entirely avoiding all forms of gratification and indulgence, even to the point of suffering. But Prince Siddhartha became Buddha when he discovered the middle way between indulgence and extreme austerity. The Stoics prized such moderation too. In fact, temperance is one of their 4 basic virtues, or what I like to call values. At the time of its emergence around 300 BCE, Athenian society had become decimated by war. Its population was widely dispersed, and it was slowly being overtaken by an encroaching Roman Empire. Its people feeling depressed, despondent, and disenfranchised, badly wanted something to help them feel better about life. They wanted what the Greeks called Eudaimonia, which means good spirit. They wanted to be of good spirit. They wanted to be cheerful and content again. They wanted to be happy. It was at this time 3 new philosophies emerged to solve the problem: Epicureanism, cynicism, and Stoicism. The first of these, Epicureanism, also called hedonism, like Siddhartha, pursued happiness through pleasure. Cynicism pursued it through austerity, like Buddha's asceticism. But Stoicism is not like Buddha's middle way. The Stoics didn't think temperance, all things in moderation, was the secret to happiness. In fact, they didn't believe that happiness has anything to do with pain or pleasure, or what brings us pain or pleasure. For the pain and pleasures we might experience are inconsequential to the matters of truth, meaning, and morality, to the perennial questions before each of us. The only thing that should matter, according to Stoicism, is the fulfillment of our core values. Everything else is indifferent. If pursuing certain pleasures doesn't diminish our values, then enjoy. If avoiding unpleasant experiences doesn't diminish them, by all means avoid undesirable circumstances. But if fulfilling our values requires us to endure certain difficulties, then endure them we must if we are to fulfill our purpose, have integrity and character, and demonstrate truth and morality the best we understand them. So pain and pleasure, indulgence and austerity are indifferent. Moderation is good Stoic practice, but embodying our values in everything we do is the greatest good, because it's the only thing that remains useful in all circumstances. If you agree with this, and you haven't ever really thought about it, the questions to begin with are, what are your core values? Write them down sometime. What are your core values? Why are they your core values? What does it take for you to fulfill them? My core values are reason, freedom of conscience, and the humanistic ethic. By reason, I mean testing our own assumptions with empirical data, facts, and logic, and treating others reasonably, with thoughtfulness, not driven by contradictory passions which flutter from one thing to another like butterflies. Being reasonable means being consistent in the demonstration of my values no matter my circumstances. It's not always easy, but I do my best. Being reasonable also means being able to properly consider the value of what others tell us is true. Freedom of conscience is about respecting the autonomy of others, not only enough to allow them to freely express themselves even when I disagree with them, but also to do my best to protect their right to do so. It means standing against authoritarianism and against authoritarians if necessary, even on behalf of those who say things I disagree with. It means being able to openly extend the hand of friendship and demonstrate respect for those in other ideological camps. That's one of my values, one of my core values. And the humanistic ethic means working for human welfare and for a society that fosters the unfolding and potential of every person. It means recognizing we are all far more akin than we are different, and because we are part of one family, the human family, we can genuinely celebrate our differences without fear or hostility. It means, as Chief Joseph said, the earth is the mother of all people, and all people should have equal rights upon it. Living out these values is a pleasure when the community one is part of is also working in the same direction. But when they begin deviating from them, it can be painful standing up for our values. If avoiding pain is the point of our lives, then we won't. But if our values, what we stand for, is the point of all we do, then the pain and pleasure is indifferent, inconsequential. Some of you may recall my annual report last year when I told you about the controversial book I had written and what I planned to do with it. Several months ago, I said I had to take a hiatus from working on another book to begin researching and writing a briefer book about how identity politics, safetyism, and political correctness are detrimentally impacting Unitarian Universalism. I found the amount of interest and scholarship written about these subjects surprising, but also extremely beneficial in helping me frame what's going on in our larger culture and sadly in our denomination these days. My efforts have resulted in a short book about my concerns, which I intend to distribute during the UUA General Assembly in Spokane later in June. With apologies, I'm withholding its release until then because timing in this case matters. I'm not sure what the consequences of this action will be, but expect some hostility to head my direction because of it. Nevertheless, if our denomination is going to survive and be worthy of survival, I feel it is a course of action I must take while the opportunity presents itself right here in our own backyard. Despite the additional stress preparing the book entitled The Gadfly Papers, 3 inconvenient essays by one pesky minister has caused, and feeling anxious about its uncertain impact, the research and writing has been rich and rewarding. I love learning about new areas of thought. It keeps the world fresh and alive for me and fills me with information, insight, and wonder that I'm always eager to pass on to you on Sunday mornings. Boy, did I ever underestimate the level of hostility that would come in my direction. But even if I had known the complete fallout, I would have done so anyway, because that's what my values require of me. I am among very few who have had the courage to push back against the assault on our traditional Unitarian values, which are also the best values our Western culture has to offer. But I had to do so as surely as the salmon must swim upstream against the odds to return to its spawning ground, because these values are the point. It's one thing when we're all swimming in the same direction, but quite another when we're not. It's one thing as a liberal to go up against conservative ideas and values. Then your peers love you. They're with you. They call you a hero. But when defending your values means going up against other liberals who have forgotten our ways, it's not easy, to say the least. But again, that's indifferent to the point. Fortunately, I'm not entirely alone. I know that. Though my detractors have worked hard to isolate me as an evil outlier who has gone insane. In early March, the members of the UU congregation of Salem issued a public statement stating in part, "We oppose recent efforts by ministers in our denomination to discourage discussion of the Gadfly Papers, 3 inconvenient essays by one pesky minister, as well as the censure of its author, Reverend Todd Eklof, by the Unitarian Universalist Ministers Association. We call on these Unitarian Universalist Ministers Association to rescind its censure of Reverend Todd Eklof, to cease referring to the UU movement as a white supremacist movement, and to encourage discussion and action to counter oppression and injustice wherever they are found." And just this week, the members of the Valley UU congregation in Chandler, Arizona, thank you all so much, issued a statement to our national leadership expressing its support of Reverend Todd Eklof and his publication of the political correctness issues in our denomination. Here is a summary of our concerns. The UUMA, and by its silence, the UUA itself, have criticized and restricted the expression of concerns for a loyal UU minister who is speaking as a matter of conscience. Neither the UUA nor the president have supported in any way, through spoken word or otherwise, the integrity and courage of Reverend Eklof. We are very disappointed that our financial contributions support actions and policies that directly counter several UU principles. We are strongly requesting that the UUA board express public support of Reverend Eklof's courage in raising important issues in our denomination. Other congregations and individuals have made similar statements because, like me, they feel we must stand up for our values if they are going to survive the radicalization of the extreme left that's impacting liberalism throughout Western society. But going up against extremism, whether it's on the left or the right, isn't easy because extremists tend towards demonizing, dehumanizing, and destroying anyone who threatens their ideologies rather than behaving reasonably. But again, avoiding such displeasure isn't the point of our lives unless we agree with the ascetics and cynics. When I first began planning this sermon, I meant to link it mostly to how defining our values can help get us through the chaos caused by the COVID-19 crisis, which should be the biggest concern for all of us right now. Unfortunately, what's transpired in our congregation these past couple of days, it has become necessary for me to once again address where I'm at with this issue. I had been trying to take a hiatus from addressing the dogmatic takeover of our liberal religion so we can all fully concentrate on getting through what should be considered a far more important problem. But it has become necessary for me to also address the pandemic of infectious intolerance and dogma threatening our free society and our liberal community. I am not sure where any of this is going to end for our church or for my ministry. It's not looking good. And it's certainly not going to be pleasant. But at least for me, pleasure isn't the point. I'm still going to pursue my values: reason, freedom of conscience, and the humanistic ethic, because that is the point of my life. These values are my responses to the perennial problems of truth and meaning and morality. The question before all of us, before our church and our world, is, are they still our values too? May the courage of the early morning's dawning and the strength of the eternal hills and the peace of the evening's ending and the love of all be in our hearts. Peace, shalom, salam, alaikum, amen.